Guess what? My graphics card crashed, and I'm just restarting for part 2 of the reindeer animation. So just looking at this, I've got my hind leg, I've got my front leg. I want to move the anchor points, use the pan behind tool. There we go. And it goes, oh, by the way, do you see this annoying thing where it's snapping to these corners and I don't want it to? It's a handy thing for certain kind of motion graphics, particularly if you're working with text, to snap things to certain key points. But I don't want it here. So up here, at the top of your screen, there's a little snapping button. I'm going to turn that off. And now it's going to move around a lot more freely. That might be something that drives you nuts someday, and maybe you'll remember this. So very, very quickly, I've got the hind leg. I'm going to press R for rotation, keyframe the rotation. Let's rotate it something inwards to start with, something like that. And I'm going to, oh, hang on, let's take this timeline back down to about 10 seconds. By the way, what I'm just doing now, I'm shrinking down my work area with the work area slider. And a very quick way to shorten your duration is to right click on that work area bar and say trim comp to work area. Now I'm down to a 10-second comp and I'm back in business. So I've got a keyframe. I want to go maybe half a second in and rotate that leg back outwards, say something like that. And that's dandy. Let's do it with the front leg as well. I'm going to press R for rotation, keyframe the rotation, rotate my leg inwards like that. And we're going to go to the next keyframe. One way of hopping from keyframe to keyframe is to use these little arrows beside the keyframe button here on the rotation channel. So if I click on the forward arrow, it moves to the next keyframe, backwards to the previous keyframe. It can be handy to go from keyframe to keyframe as you're animating. So let's go to the second keyframe here, and we want to do something like that. So I've got an animation where the legs are going kind of like that. And that's nice, but I don't want to have to keyframe that again and again and again for every leg movement. So this is where using a little expression will help us. So I want an expression to tell this rotation on the hind leg to loop. So the way I do it is I'm going to go to my little stopwatch here. I press my Alt key and click on the stopwatch. And this opens out a little code window for writing expressions. And I'm going to type into it. I'm just going to type in LOP. And you can see that as I start typing loop, it pre-guesses what I'm going to type next, which is loop out in parentheses there. So I'm going to double click on that. In it goes. Now, an ordinary loop out will do this. It's going to, it's going to keep on looping like that. So it's effectively starting at the start, going to the end, starting at the start, going to the end. Whereas I wanted to swing back and forth, which is like a ping pong effect. So I'm going to type into the parenthesis. I'm going to put in inverted commas, and you can see it automatically gives me a menu of what I want to do. I'm going to choose ping pong and double click, in it goes. So now I've got that, and that's looking much better. I've got a hind leg that's rotating. Let's do the same for the front leg. I'm going to Alt click on the stopwatch. I can type loop out, or alternatively, I can just select all of this, copy, Control C, go down here, paste, Control V, and I've got it there. So now I've got that going on for both feet. Now, one thing we're going to do quite a lot of is look at animation easing and graphs later on. But for the moment, suffice it to say that that movement is the same speed the whole time, and it's a little bit too rigid. Most things build up speed in motion, slow down towards the end, they accelerate out of full stop. So a way I'm going to do this is to select the keyframes here. I can select them both like that, or I can even select the keyframes of both layers like that. And I'm going to make them ease in and ease out of the motion. So a number of ways of doing that. We can right click and go to keyframe assistant and easy ease. But I recommend just using the shortcut. It's going to be one, if you're using After Effects, you're going to be using this all the time. So the shortcut of F9 is worth remembering. And you can see that changes those keyframes to a different shape, which tells me they're ease keyframes. And now if I play the animation, you can see it's much more of an elastic movement, which is quite nice to see there. I could give him I'd give him 2 front legs and 2 hind legs. He's in silhouette, so it would be okay as it is. But let's try this. I'll take the hind leg. I go Control D on the layer to duplicate it. And I'm just going to change those keyframes. So if I press R, I can bring out my rotation keyframes. And I'm just going to change them slightly so that this first keyframe is a little bit more like that. And then the second keyframe is maybe a little bit more like that. So now it's already got the ease and the loop and the ease in it, and I can do something like that. Let's do the same for the front leg. Take the front leg, Control D to duplicate it. And again, I'm just going to vary it a little bit from the other one. So I can press R for rotation, or I can choose my U key to reveal any keyframes that are on the layer. So the U key is a very handy one for getting at the keyframes in the layer, particularly when you've got a lot of keyframes, as you may have. So now I'm going to end the rotation for this one. I'm going to start this leg a bit more like that. Click on the arrow to jump to the second keyframe. And again, just vary it slightly like that. Okay, so we now have an animated reindeer. And because I'm afraid my graphics card might go again, I'm just going to save this as reindeer. Okay, so we've got a reindeer, and the fun happens when we go back into our original layer. I'm going to hide the sleigh here for a moment, and you can see that all of those animations are now just collapsed down into the one layer, which is great because it'll allow us to do some other stuff. So yeah, we were just going to keep this to about 10 seconds. I'm going to take my work area, drag it down to about here, right click, trim comp to work area, and we've got something like that. Let's change this composition so it's a HD format. Go up to composition settings. We're going to go change the preset to HD 1080 25 frames per second. That's pretty good. Let's take the reindeer layer, which is all of the layers together, and now we can press S for scale and shrink it down to something like this. We might press R for rotation and just rotate it a little bit like this. So we've got a reindeer, and this one is going to be at the front of the group. So let's make some duplicates. I'm selecting the reindeer composition layer, Control D, and I'm going to move it something like that. Let's press Control to select both of them together. Control D. We've got 2 more. Just going to press R for rotation here and rotate them a little bit. Okay, and let's do 2 more. Control D. I'm going to move them around like that. So we now have 6 reindeer all flying together. You can see though that their legs are too much in unison, so it would be nice to vary these things up. And one way of doing that is to change the positioning of the layer. So if I grab the layer here for the reindeer comp, and I can drag the slider so that this one might start playing a little bit earlier. And I'm just going to extend that. The next one, I'll leave it as it is. This one I might start playing a little bit later. This one a bit earlier again, so that I'm just varying up the the synchronicity of the leg movement. Now, in doing that, of course, certain reindeers just pop in and out because I've made them start a bit later. So here I'm just going to drag my work area to the first layer that's going to be visible there. I'm going to do the same with the last one. Oops, just grab the tab there, take it to about there, take this one to about here, and trim comp to work area. So now they're all doing different things with their legs, and it's looking kind of good. Let's bring in Santa Claus. So let's scale him down, press S for scale. And we've got something like that. So we could give a little bit of motion to Santa Claus as he's bouncing along in the wind. So I'm just going to do that with the puppet pin tool. I'm going to put a puppet pin on the bauble of his hat, put one on his head, maybe down around there at the base. Now you see, if I start pulling this, the bauble of the hat is moving, but the sleigh is rocking a bit too much. So instead I'm going to put some more pins down here to anchor a lot of those points. And that should be sufficient. So now if I drag the bauble, that's going to do it like that. So let's do some puppet pinning. So I'm going to just take my playhead forward. As you know, puppet pins are the one type of animation that you don't need to click on the stopwatch to tell it you're going to animate, because they're designed for animating. So they assume that once you start using the puppet pin, you're going to be animating. Oh, what happened there? Let's undo that. Control Z. And that looks good. Okay, let's see what that looks like. I'm happy with that. It would be nice to have, I could remove those reins there, but what I just want to do is put in some reins that are moving with the motion of the reindeer. So I'm going to make a shape layer. Now, let's close all of the layers first of all. So I can just click on the arrow beside the sleigh. All the other ones are go Control A to select all. And then I can click on the arrow and any layers that are open will collapse. If I have a layer selected and I take the pen tool and start drawing, it's going to make me a mask on the layer. That's not what I want. So if I have no layer selected, however, and take the pen tool, it's going to make me a vector shape. I want one from the hands there. I'm going to click and drag to curve it a little bit and go up to the front reindeer. So what's happening here is it's thinking that it needs to fill that vector shape with color. And I want to say, no, I just want the line itself. So I'm going to go up here to the top of the screen where it says fill. And I'm going to choose the option with the red line struck through it, which means there is no fill whatsoever. I'm going to go to where it says stroke, and I'm going to choose the next one in, which is solid color, and click on OK. And there where it says stroke, I'm going to change that color to black, and I can adjust the thickness of the stroke to get a different kind of line. So let's do something like about that. Sometimes you're going to want to have things selected and not see the blue lines coming up. I'm going to click this toggle mask and shape visibility to hide and show that. So this allows me to see there's the line. It's probably a little bit thick, so I'll make the stroke down to something like about 7 pixels. So we're going to do a little animation on that line to make it look like it's moving in the wind. I'm going to take that shape layer, let's call it rain. Just press enter there, rain, and we are going to do a little animation on it. So if I open out the rain, open out the contents, open out the shape, you can see if I open out the path, there's a stopwatch. So I want to animate the path of that line. I'm going to click on the stopwatch, and as they're flying through the air, I want to animate that line. So I'm going to just click on the point here. I'm going to do something like that. Go further up. And do something like that. Maybe vary it a little bit. So the point where the hands are and the point where the reindeer's head is are much the same. So let's do something like that. Okay, so I've got one of the reins. Let's just collapse that layer, duplicate it again, Control D, and the duplicate version, I'm just going to go into its points. So I'm going to click on the layer, and just for simplicity here, there we go. It's reindeer 2, or rain 2. I'm going to click on the layer, and I want to get okay, I'm just going to hide the other rain for the moment, and I'm going to hide the reindeers. I just want to see this layer on its own. So there's my layer. We can open up the contents shape path. So we've got, there's our path, and I want it to behave for me. Okay, come on now. Rain. Just going to isolate the layer, click on the little dot there, and get at my path. There we go. So I want to go to some of these keyframes. Let's say this keyframe. Okay, I'm just going to delete it and go back again to the first one. I'm not sure what's going on with this. There's my rain. Okay, maybe it was because it was hidden. There's my rain. I click on the line. This should reveal me my, there we go. No, it doesn't. This should reveal me. I'm just going to start again on the animation. So I've got the rain. There's my point that I was trying to select all along. So keyframe the path. I'm going to go to here. Move this. You got to be precise there. Move it down. Okay, let's go to here. Move it up. It's trying to make a fool of me. Let's go to here and do something like that. Okay, that gets me rain 1. Let's try rain 2. This time, rather than duplicate that layer, I'm going to make a new layer. So making sure I have no layer selected, I take my pen tool. I'm going to draw another rain, something like that. I'm going to take my point tool. I'm going to open up the contents of that layer, go to the path, keyframe the path. I'm going to go to different points on it and move those, move those points And we're getting something like that. That's all I wanted. Phew, let's unhide these other layers now. Okay, and we want this one to be about there. Okay, I'm just going to go from keyframe to keyframe here. So we want the point to be there. And we want it to be there. That'll do. Okay, we got the Santa moving through the sky. Finally, after all of that kerfuffle, we're going to bring in another image, night sky. I'm going to take that night sky, I'm going to put it into a new composition. Okay, and we're going to take